The next morning, Toby woke up in his bed. He felt different. He wasn't tired at all, and when he consciously woke up, he felt like he had been lying there awake for hours. He had no thoughts flowing through his mind. He sat up slowly and stumbled over to the wall. But when he stood, he automatically felt dizzy. He stumbled to the doorway, walked down the stairs to his parents were sitting at the table. His father had turned the small TV that sat on the countertop, and his mother was reading the newspaper. She quickly looked over and felt Toby's presence looming behind her. "Well, good morning, sleepyhead. You've been sleeping forever," she greeted him. She greeted him with a hesitant smile. Toby slowly looked over to the clock and noticed that it was 12:30 p.m. "I made you breakfast, but it got cold. I was going to wake you up, but I felt you needed sleep." Her expression fell from happy to worried when her son resisted responding to her. "Are you all right?" Toby stumbled over and sat by his father. He felt as if he was on idle and had no control over his actions. He was seeing everything he did, but he didn't register in his brain properly. He reached out to his father's arm, and his hand ended up getting slapped by his father and abruptly and pushed his chair with his foot. "Don't touch me, boy!" he yelled. His mother stood up. All right, now that's enough. That's the last thing we need." The days went by, and things continued on as they were. Connie spent most of her time cleaning the house, and her rude husband spent most of the time ordering her around. It was just like it was before the crash. Toby never really left his room. He sat by his bed and trembled, his mind with wonder, and his thoughts had changed so fast to be remembered. He would pace around his room like a caged animal, or stare out the window, and the unhealthy cycle continued. Connie continued to be pushed around by her husband, being way too submissive to him, and Toby remained in his room. Before he could think twice, he began to chew on his hands, tearing the flesh from his fingers. He would gnaw on them until they bled, and when his mother walked in on him doing it, while he was doing so, she reacted horribly. She rushed him downstairs and got the first aid kit, wrapping his hands up in bandages. Afterwards, she demanded that he wouldn't leave her side again. Toby isolated himself so much that he grew to hate being around others. His memory grew glitchy as well. He started missing memories for minutes, hours, days, and so on. He would begin talking nonsense about completely unrelated things unrelated to the conversations that he would have. He would go off about seeing things, sharks in the sink as he washed the dishes, and hearing crickets in his pillows, and seeing ghosts outside his bedroom window. His mom grew so anxious about his mental health that she decided it would be good for him to go to talk to a professional about what he was feeling. Connie walked Toby into the building, holding his hand and guiding him in. She walked him up to the front desk and began talking to the lady who sat behind it. "Mrs. Rogers?" the lady asked. "Yes, that's me," Connie nodded. "We're here to see Dr. Oliver. I'm here with Toby Rogers." "Yes, right this way." The lady stood and led him down a long hallway. Toby looked at the framed artwork down the hall and tuned into the sound of the lady's high heels on the hardwood floor. She opened the door to the room with a table and 2 chairs. "If we could get him to sit here for a few minutes, I'll go get the doctor." She smiled and held the door open. Toby stumbled into the room and sat at the table. He looked over to his mother and the lady before the door slowly shut behind him. He looked around the room before he held up his tightly bandaged hand and began to bite at the bandages to unwrap his hand. But he was interrupted when the door swung open and a young woman with a black spotted dress with light blonde hair stepped in, holding a clipboard and pen. "Toby?" she said with a smile. Toby looked up and nodded. "It's nice to meet you, Toby. My name is Dr. Oliver." She put her hand out for him to shake, but hesitantly pulled away when she noticed his bandaged hand. "Oh!" she smiled nervously before clearing her throat and sitting in the chair at the table from him. "So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Try to answer them honestly. Try to answer them as honestly as possible, okay?" She placed her clipboard on the table. Toby nodded slowly and held his restraining hands to his lap. "So, how old are you, Toby?" 17, he responded quietly. She wrote that down on paper and clipped it to the clipboard. "What's your full name?" "Toby Aaron Rogers." "When's your birthday?" "April 28th. "Who's your immediate family?" Toby paused before answering the question. "My mom, my dad, and..." He stopped. my sister. I heard about your sister, dear. I'm really sorry. Her expression faded into a sad, pity-filled look. Toby nodded. Do you remember anything from the crash, Toby? Toby looked away from her. His mind went blank for a moment. He looked down at his lap and the surrounding area and heard a faint ringing sound. His eyes widened as he froze in place. Toby, the counselor asked. Toby, are you listening? Toby felt a shiver go down his spine until he froze once again and slowly looked over to the little window through the door where he saw it, the dark, featureless figure peering in at him. He stared, his eyes widened, the ringing grew louder and louder until suddenly the voice of the counselor broke his trance. Toby! She yelled. Toby jumped and fell sideways out of his chair and backed up into the corner. Dr. Oliver stood up, holding the clipboard to her chest, a surprised look in her eyes. Toby met her eyes again. His breath hitched as he twitched. That night, Toby lay on his bed. His eyes were dazed and stared straight up at the ceiling. He could feel himself doze off when he heard scattering of footsteps down his hallway. He sat up and looked toward the doorway, the door wide open. There was no light. Everything was lit by the luminescent blue glow of the moon through the window. Leaving cold lighting, he stood up and slowly made his way toward the door when suddenly which previously wide open slammed in his face. He gasped and fell back. He was out of breath when he hit the ground and began breathing heavily, his eyes wide open. He waited a few seconds before getting back on his feet. He reached out and grasped the cold door handle with his bandaged hand and creaked it open. He looked out to the dark hallway and tiptoed out of his room. The window at the end of the hallway lit sounded like the child that ran in front of him, giggling and running around. His hallway was longer than he remembered. It seemed endless, like a ride home from the hospital. He heard a door creak in front of him. Mom, he called in a shaky voice. Suddenly the door slammed behind him and he jumped and turned around. Beside him, he heard a long, eerie groan and sounded like a croak right in his ear. He turned around and, fast as he could, suddenly was face to face with none other than his dead sister. Her eyes clotted white, her skin pale, the right side of her jaw dangling there by tissue and muscle, glass protruding from her forehead, black blood leaking from her face, her blonde hair pulled up in a ponytail as it always was, and she was wearing her gray t-shirt and athlete shorts, which were dirty and spotted with blood. Her legs were bent in ways they shouldn't be. She stood emitting a loud croaking noise only an inch away from Toby's face. Toby yelped and fell back. Ah! He started to crawl backwards away from her, but he wasn't able to break eye contact with her blank, dead eyes. He dragged himself backwards until he backed up into something. He stopped for a second. Everything was dead silent except for the heavy breathing and crying. He slowly looked up to meet the blank face of a tall figure, the same figure that stood over him now. Behind the tall dark mask were rows of children looking from age 10 to 3 years old, their eyes completely black, and dark blood leaked from their eye sockets. He screamed and stood up as fast as he could, and only to be tripped by dark tendrils that wrapped around his ankles. He fell straight on his stomach, and the wind knocked out of him. He tried to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. He wheezed out before it all went black. Toby woke up with a start. He screamed and sat up as fast as he could, completely short of breath. He wheezed out and held his chest with his bandaged hands. It was just a dream. Just a dream. He lay back down on his bed and rolled over onto his side. It felt like against the weight had been lifted off his chest as he took in deep breaths. He stood up and padded over to the window. He saw nothing. Nothing was there. No ghosts, no figures, nothing. He heard the rustling and coughing of his father outside the doorway. His door was closed. He walked over and opened it, looking into the hallway once again. He padded down the hallway into the kitchen where he found his dad standing and having a smoke in their living room. Toby waited a second and watched him around the corner before a burning feeling started deep in his chest. A boiling anger overtook him. He heard little imaginary voices in his head. Do it, do it, do it, they chanted. He turned away and held his arms. He felt like he actually had control over himself. Unlike he did for the past few weeks since he got home from the hospital, he actually had complete thoughts for just moments before the chanting of the little voices in his head clouded them. Kill him. He wasn't there. He wasn't there. Kill him. Kill him. They counted on. Toby trembled. No, he wasn't going to do it. What, was he going crazy? He won't kill anyone. He can't. He hated his father, but there's no way he was going to kill him. That was it. That was the last thought he had before he fell into an idle state once again. The influence of the voices in his head was too much. He began silently walking up behind his father and reached over the counter to the knife in the case. Gripping with his hand, he felt a sensation in his chest. He had to let out a snicker. He began laughing so hard that he had to grasp for breath. His father turned around abruptly before he felt a brute force shove him to the floor. He was grunting. He grunted as the air got knocked out of him. What? He looked up to the boy standing over him, grasping the kitchen knife in his hand. Toby, what are you doing? When he stood up, he put his arms out in front of him for self-defense. But before he knew it, Toby was on top of him. He went to grab at his neck, but his father stopped and reached and blocked his hand by grabbing his wrist. Stop! Get off me, you little... He yelled, and with his other hands he threw on another punch toward Toby's shoulder, but he didn't stop. The look in Toby's eyes was not sane. It looked like a demon had taken control of him. He yelled back and stabbed the knife into his father's chest. His father blocked him and grabbed into his wrist once again. He went and shoved him back, and Toby kicked his feet in front of him and landed a hard blow straight in his father's face. His father recoiled and pulled his arms away to cuff his face, but Toby got back up and drove the knife straight into his shoulder. His father let out a loud cry and he went to pull the knife out, but before he could, Toby threw his fist straight into his face. He began to pound his fist in his head, laughing and wheezing. He cracked his neck and grabbed the knife and ripped it out of his father's shoulder. He drove it deep into his chest and repeatedly stabbed into his torso, blood spilling out and getting splattered everywhere. He didn't stop until his father's body went still. He threw the knife over to the side and leaned over his body, coughing and panting. He stared at his father's smashed face and sat there twitching until a loud scream broke his silence. He looked over to see his mother standing a few feet in the doorway, covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Toby! She screamed. Why did you do that? She cried. Why? She screamed. Toby stood up and began to back away from his father's bloody corpse. He began to back out of the kitchen. He looked down at his blood-soaked bandages on his hands and looked up at his mother one last time before he turned and ran out of the house. He ran into the garage and slammed his hands against the control panel on the wall and pushed the buttons to open the garage door. But before he ran out, he noticed his father's hatchets, which had been hanging on the tool rack above a table of jars filled to the brim with old rusted nails and screws. One of the hatchets was new, with a bright orange handle and a shiny blade. The other one was old, with a wooden handle and an old dull hatchet and an old dull blade. He grabbed both of them and looked down the table and saw a box of matches, and under the table was a red gasoline tank. He held both of the hatchets in one hand and grabbed the matches and the gasoline before running out of the garage and down the driveway to the street. As he approached the street light he could see out of his bedroom window, he heard police sirens in the distance. He turned around, and the red-blue flashing lights came rushing down the street. Toby stood for a second before he pulled open the cap on the gasoline tank and ran down the street, spilling the gasoline all over the street after him. He turned and ran into the trees. He poured the last bit of gasoline out before he reached into his pocket and pulled out a match. He struck it against the box and immediately dropped it, and in an instant flames bursted around him. The fire caught in the trees, bushes around him, and before he knew it, he was surrounded by fire. The silhouettes of police cars were visible through the flames as he backed into the forest around him. He looked around, but his vision was blurred, his heart was pounding, his eyes closed for a moment. This was it. This was the end. Toby felt a hand on his shoulder. He opened his eyes and looked over to see a large white hand with bony fingers resting on his shoulder. He followed the arm that was attached to a hand of a dark, towering figure.